We've got some breaking news for you now when it comes to Labor's proposed hate speech laws. One of the peak Jewish bodies is urging the federal coalition to support the legislation, to amend it, yes, but to ultimately back the bill. This is the statement I've just received from the Executive Council of Australian Jewry co-executive chief, Peter Wertheim. He says that the group would urge the coalition not to allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good. He says, yes, amend the bill to remove its shortcomings, but in his words, a wholesale of rejection of the bill would not at all be warranted. I want to go now to the National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie. We've got this statement, a lengthy one at that, on our screen there, Bridget. You've just heard some of it. Peter Wertheim arguing that the status quo is no longer tolerable. We need legislative reform now, even if it's less than ideal. Do you willing to heed the calls there from one of Australia's most respected Jewish leaders?
Well, I think, Trudy, as we started to discuss yesterday, changing laws around speech, freedom of speech, is such a significant change to the way we conduct ourselves as a society that this bill needed much more than the very short, sharp, perfunctory review that's being undertaken over the last 48 hours. Submissions to that inquiry are due at 4 o'clock today. The report will be written tomorrow for legislation that we're supposed to debate on Tuesday next week, and the 500 pages of the bill and the explanatory memorandum only arriving on everyone's doorsteps a couple of days ago. So I fully appreciate, as a Zionist myself, the concerns of the Australian Jewish community and the concerns that they have been raising for over 2 years around the spike in antisemitism and the horrific attack that has, Bondi came on the back of synagogue bombings, businesses being trashed, children being spat on the way to work over the last 2.5 years. So we've talked about this ad nauseum. To only give our society, our parliament, 48 hours on which to really get this right so we don't see the unintended consequences that Britain's currently experiencing with these type of laws. It is really beholden on the government and the Prime Minister to make sure the Parliament can do its job, to get the experts around the table. When I've spoken to stakeholders, whether it be law councils and the like, or indeed those involved in the firearm industry, they're scrambling to get their legal eagles across the legislation so they can make some sort of sensible commentary to this hearing. That's not the way to conduct this type of significant change. We didn't do it with Mabo. We didn't do it with marriage equality. We didn't do it with The Voice, and we shouldn't be doing it with this.
But, Bridget, I wonder if the intervention, though, from the Executive Council of Australian Jewry here will shift the dial in terms of the coalition's view. I know you believe there are significant shortcomings. That is acknowledged by Peter Wertheim himself. He appeared for more than an hour yesterday at this parliamentary hearing. He is telling the coalition, in his words, don't allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good.
Well, Trudy, as you said, it's breaking news. I'll read the statement with interest. I think as the Australian Jewish community knows what strong supporters we as a coalition have been of them and their issues over the last 2.5 years. There is absolutely no doubt that the Liberal and the National Party stand with the Jewish Australians in the face of a government that silenced its own ears for 2.5 years as we saw anti-Semitism rise. I mean, the bill before us doesn't even deal with the issue of Islamic extremism, Trudy. It's not mentioned once in the bill. So
I want to get to that, Bridget. Let's talk about that.
Very difficult to stomach, a government that's saying they've got the solution to the problem we've been screaming about, and yet they can't even name the actual problem, which is Islamic extremism.
I want to put to you the government's rebuttal to that. The opposition leader made that same argument this morning, that it's not mentioned in the bill. Now, the government's saying that the bill targets anti-Semitism right across the board, be that from the ideological standpoint of radical Islam, but also if your ideology is neo-Nazis, that it is necessarily targeting all anti-Semitic hate. What's your response?
Well, all anti-Semitic hate needs to be squashed. I mean, we don't want to be in a society where our Jewish citizens are targeted. And I think there's been a whole reckoning over the summer since Bondi of everyday Australians with compassionate hearts who were co-opted into a global Islamic extremist PR campaign and took to the streets in our capital city, marching week in, week out for 2 years, now thinking, was I actually part of an anti-Semitic movement? Yes, you were. You may not see yourself as anti-Semitic, but those marches had anti-Semitism at their very heart. And so there's had to be quite a confronting period, I think, for individuals in our society as a whole, coming to terms with how that was visited upon our society and how changed we are as a result. So, of course, we have to deal with anti-Semitism, right? Of course, we have to implement Gillian Segal's recommendations of a report that she handed to the Prime Minister over 6 months ago. But this
Bridget,
bill,
can I ask you about the parliamentary
hearings
reality?
we've had, doesn't pass muster. Yeah.
If the coalition does not do a deal with the Labor Party here, it essentially deals in the Greens. That's the reality of the numbers in the Senate. You know it better than I do, every day sitting on the floor. Could that risk making your concerns about the hate speech bill worse, or even the changes when it comes to gun laws, that they could be even tougher because Labor is doing a deal with the Greens because they can't with the coalition?
Well, I think this really says everything that we're going to do deals around such a significant piece of legislation, a piece of legislation that says it wants to deal with anti-Semitism, that says it wants to deal with migration law. Every single senator, every single member of parliament needs to be putting the national interest first, and so does the government. Stop playing politics and rushing this bill through, because you know, Trudy, as well as I do, stakeholders, Sporting Shooters Association, industry, legal experts needed more time to actually provide the level of advice to government and to the parliament to get these laws right. That's how our system works. And if you're not going to let everyone do their job so we can get the best possible outcome for our country, then that's on the government, right? It is on the Prime Minister's head. Stop playing politics, deal with the anti-Semitism in the Labor Party, deal with it within your own parliamentary wing, and deal with it in Labor Party seats. That's where the problem is. Take that up, Prime Minister, and then we'll think you've got the courage to make a difference. This bill doesn't do the job.
National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie, I'm glad you fixed the camera issues we were having yesterday. Appreciate you coming back on. Thank you.